I'm going to introduce our panelists here for today. I'm going to read just their quick bio, and then we'll kick off into the Q&A portion of this event. The Q&A is going to be open. It's an open-ended question. Feel free to ask our artists anything to do about the exhibition, about their inspirations, their career, any questions that you would like to ask them. So first I'd like to introduce, starting from the top, is Kip Fulbeck, who is a Perseverance exhibition designer and photographer. He is a professor of art at UC Santa Barbara, who has exhibited and performed in over 20 countries and throughout the US. He is the creator of the Hapa Project and author of Part Asian, 100% Hapa, and Permanence Tattoo Portraits. Next, we have Takahiro Kitamura, who is the curator of the exhibition Perseverance. He is renowned for his advocacy of Japanese tattooing as an art form. He is the co-founder and co-director of the annual Bay Area Convention of the Tattoo Arts, owner of State of Grace Tattoo Shop in San Jose, California. Next, we have Brian Kaneko. He was first exposed to tattooing as a teenager through his mother's boyfriend, a ceramicist who was friends with Ed Hardy. He met Bill Salmon and Perseverance featured artist Junie while working at a tattoo studio during college. He credits them, the Horitoshi family, and his Japanese grandmother as his biggest influences for Japanese tattooing. He tattoos at True Nature Tattoo in Humboldt County, California. Where am I? And we have Chaz, who is acknowledged as the pioneer of East Los Angeles Cholo-style graffiti for more than 40 years. He is well known for his stylized skull called Señor Suerte, or Mr. Luck, a street image of protection from death. He is represented in the Smithsonian Institute, National Museum of American Art, LACMA, MoCA, and Laguna Art Museum. And last but not least, we have Horishiki Brand. He brings a unique perspective to Japanese tattooing by showcasing original Chicano Latino interpretations of traditional Japanese fables. He has worked at the famed Good Time Charlie's Tattoo Land in Anaheim for over a decade, co-authored the Ulysses Guide to the Los Angeles, and he received the title Horishiki from Horitomo in 2013. So please help me welcome our panelists for today. So how we'll go about doing this Q&A is if you have a question, please raise your hand, and either myself or Ryan will bring the mic to you. Please wait till the mic comes to you so that we can capture your questions on camera. So who would like to start us off for today? Any takers? Okay, we have one right here. And to help us, to just keep your hands raised if you have a question.
Taki, I just wanted to, just a general question here. I might be the only person who doesn't know the answer to this, but in the beautiful presentation, I think it's a Shinto shrine up there in a sacred area that Kip got involved with, and it's elevated off the floor. In the middle of that space is a beautiful bell hanging down on a little twig. I'm more familiar with Western religions and philosophies than Eastern religions. So how does a bell in the exhibit there work to tie in the sacredness of the presence?
I'll let Kip, the exhibition designer, answer that.
I'm glad you noticed that. Most people don't see that. I designed not basically but also on Buddhist and Confucian ideologies, because so much of tattooing is a cross-fertilization of different cultures, as well as religions and mythologies. So at that point, that was the last piece I put in, and there was no rhyme or reason why. I just felt the right thing to do there.
So all bells in a Shinto temple are not hung by little twigs then. Okay. Thanks. No, I really appreciate that. That helps. You put so much detail into putting the show together. I give it a 200%.
I felt, thank you for that. I felt that trying to do honor to the work of these artists was the biggest challenge, because I felt like having work on, Taki has done my arms, and Horitomo did my back, and Horikena is going to do my chest next week. And I feel like when these masters are working on the body, they're so careful in using the space correctly that I felt I had that kind of challenge with me. The phrase I use is, I felt like if I'm a cook, I had the best ingredients to cook with, and I had no choice but to try to, get the right meal done. So that's why I was trying to live up to these guys designing the show.
One thing I actually would like to say, though, is that obviously with Japanese tattooing, there's a lot of cultural rules. There's things that you don't want to do incorrectly. That takes a lot of research. But at the end of the day, art is art, and you want it to look good. It is a visual art. So people will often ask, like, oh, why did you do that? Why did you do this? And sometimes you just do something because it looks nice. Like, you don't want to, like, obviously offend or break any tradition in an improper way, but there are times when it's just purely visual, or if you just feel something. And then specifically with what we do as tattooers, you also take into account what the client wants. And so you have to always, like, be aware of that as well.
All right, next question. Sorry.
Since I know nothing about tattooing, could you give a little history without boring everybody else?
About Japanese tattooing, or?
Yep, Japanese would be fine.
Okay. To paraphrase, if you go back, there's Jomon period, like 10,000 BC on pottery that has markings that people assume are tattoos. The earliest accounts of the Japanese people, at that time I believe was called the Land of Wa by the Chinese. They say that they went to Japan and they saw people with, like, markings that would probably be almost called tribal now, like on faces, necks, and hands, for as far as rank and social stature and whatnot. As far as what we are doing here, this is a product of the Edo period. That's 1603 to 1867 Japan, and is continuing now to present day. So I guess that would be the condensed version. It's hard to say because when people ask about the history of tattooing in general, I think tattooing has existed in pretty much every culture on every continent in one way, shape, or form. I don't know, I'm sure someone here knows, or someone's smartphone knows. They found that one mummy with the tattoos, like 5,000 BC and whatnot, and I think every culture claims to have at some point had a tattoo, and I'm sure it's just, I guess if anything, it would show like a need for people to decorate themselves. But the current Japanese tattooing is a product of the Edo period Japan, probably I'd say like late 1700s, mid 1800s, around there.
Well, I think they were the first to, like, artistically, I think before there was a lot of, like, pictographs, symbology, like you were saying, tribal style work. It was more, like, symbolic versus it was decorative, but I think they were the first to take, what we would consider 2D art or drawings and, more representative stuff and put on the body in an artistic way that worked well.
And actually, this might be a good thing because, Chris, maybe, because this ties in also too, is like, also what gets depicted. So, Chris, you want to talk about Suikoden from China to Japan to LA?
No, realistically, it's similar to what both of them have been discussing. You have situations that came from whether it was spiritual representation and statue representation into criminal representations. Those end up putting a shock into the cultures to create stories about these criminal representations, which then create actual pictorial images of these criminals, which then goes into enjoying these representations, these pictorial representations of these criminals, which makes stories and tattoos and prints, and it all art imitating life, imitating art. It goes back and forth into today, really is the best way I could put it, simply.
And specifically, like, one of the biggest contributions that, Chris is an amazing artist in his own right. Most Japanese tattoo artists, I think, in a lot of ways, like, we're continuing a tradition that's been going on for several hundred years, but he's actually created something entirely new. And what we're specifically talking about is that, there were these stories that came out of China of 108 bandit warriors that fought against a very corrupt government. And then those stories got translated into Japanese in 16-something by Bucking, And when the Japanese illustrated it, due to the tattoo craze, they embellished upon the tattoos. And then when certain print artists, as he was saying, it kind of keeps building on itself, you know, and then so you have these tattooed guys in Japan, and then they're making prints of tattooed Chinese outlaws, and then it's all just cross-feeding. Also, there was a very similar current running there, where in both countries there was a dissatisfaction with the government, where you had a class system, which was great if you're a samurai or if you're at the top of the class thing, which probably still exists. I mean, if you're rich, life's a little easier than if you're not. But, you know, in that sense, it was a very unjust system, so a lot of these people really identified with these tattooed warriors that were opposing a corrupt government, and so that really resonated with the Japanese. And then from there, Chris actually has taken that idea and brought it into current times, and then created a series of Chicano-based images using influence from the Japanese and the Chinese stories and artworks, and then into something that's completely new, something very, I would say, Californian, American, and worldly. But I think it also shows how cultures mutate and change over time. Like I often use the example of kabuki troops. Like you have kabuki troops that can trace their lineages back to kabuki is a form of Japanese theater, if anyone does not know. But you can trace their lineages back 10 generations. But you can have two different troops do the exact same play, but they'll do it differently. And neither's really wrong or right. It's just the way culture evolves. I think I don't know. Chaz is like here our veteran artist of the bunch here. I don't know if you wanted to add that.
Being one of the only people here without tattoos, I have a lot to say. No, it's in my case, it was probably about cultural identity with the Chicanos from the 1940s. I was trying to find my identity, I'll make it real quick, and so I drew this big smiling skull with a big hat and a fur collar and all that, coming out of the late 60s, 69 or so. That was what I would be. I was a graffiti writer. I was tagging in the streets, but that image resonated into my whole community, into the Latino gang culture. They're the ones who took it and made tattoos out of it. I wasn't intended to make a tattoo image. I wanted to make an image that represented my community, that we could take something that nobody likes, graffiti, and say we could be proud of. Now there's probably over 1,000 men in prison who have my skull tattoo on them. And they've made a legend of mistaking themselves and saying, if you have the skull on you, if you get shot, you won't die. So it's become a protection symbol. So in some ways, this tattoo image was totally created from the audience and all that. It wasn't intended by me. So I think I think the audience embellishes or empowers these images. I think it's audience generated. I think, these tattoos are more than just what's on the surface of the skin, but I think it represents groups, ideology, and also it's very contemporary. We have a question here from this.
If I could jump in real quick.
We'll go to that question first, and then once you remember.
This beautiful young woman here.
Hello. My question is to Chris. I wanted to know how that kind of came about. I'm really curious. Speaking of, I know you as an artist, and I know you have a creative background, but the tattooing and how you integrated the Japanese and Latino imagery for tattooing, and is that something that you started doing, kind of, or were your clients asking for that type of imagery, or was it something that you were experimenting with already because of here living in LA?
No, it was definitely the latter. It was an idea I had through a lot of research and love for the world of Japanese tattoo and the storytelling involved in Japanese tattoo. But while doing any of this research and travel and kind of questioning lots of different masters as far and wide as I could go at the time, I was also at a home base of an institution of black and gray Chicano tattooing, which is Good Time Charlie's. So no matter what in my background, I've always tried to kind of play with as many different genres and styles as humanly possible, because it's art. It's all art, whether it's tattoo, whether it's carving, whether it's sculpting, it's all art. Different arts have different traditions, different arts have different boundaries. And a lot of those traditions and boundaries, I think, are in place for a reason. And to me, that was happening in Chicano tattooing, and that was obviously very much happening in Japanese tattooing. And kind of as Taki was saying earlier, a lot of those connections are, you know, based on these groups who are oppressed. And that's obviously happened here in Los Angeles with the Chicano community. It still happens to this day. It happens with any number of communities. But specifically because of that link to Good Chum Charlie's, it was speaking to me as the Chicano community. And very obviously happening with the Japanese community and their love of tattoo, but also their oppression of tattoo. But the more and more and more I would dig, the more and more I'd see these similarities between the two cultures. And initially I intended it to very hopefully become tattoos, but I never expected it to actually become tattoos. So I was going to maybe do some drawings or paintings or something to that. Did as much research as I could to find out, has this been tattooed? Has this ever been done? Asked all the people I could think of, mainly pointing back to Ed Hardy, because if anybody had ever done anything like this, it'd be Ed Hardy, you know. And luckily, I mean, I happen to be able to call Bill and Junie very good friends, and Jack Rudy, my boss, to be a good friend, and they all know Ed quite well. They all have wonderful history with him, and they said, no, I've never seen him do it, and eventually got to actually talk to Ed, and the best he could come up with, and it was wonderful, is, oh, I had that idea. I had this idea to do some sort of Cholo Tomomori, which is a whole other story, not the Suikoden story, not the stories that I'm doing, but a similar concept, but purely the idea. And I mean, ideas are ephemeral, they're everywhere. We've all got them, it's just a matter of doing it. So.
How long has that been going?
Which?
Chicano.
Specifically what I'm doing, I mean, I had the idea back in maybe 04, 03. So not that long ago, but that was merely the idea and a couple sketches, and it wasn't until I think 06 or 07 that someone saw the sketch where I was working and said, oh, that's an interesting idea, what's that? And I explained as much as I could to him about the concept, and that to me the biggest power of the concept wasn't the mere combination of the aesthetic look. It wasn't just putting a headband on a samurai, you know, or a chara on his chest or something like that. It was really about the respect to both sides, because there's so much respect and so much tradition that I don't want to throw away that's in Japanese tattooing. The same, as far as I'm concerned, it might not be quite as old, but the same goes for Chicano tattooing. There's a lot of respect and tradition that I've learned from being at Tattoo Land. So to me, this was the best way to combine them with respect, because tattoo is about respect. I got to respect the client's got to respect me, the viewer needs to be respecting all of this, and we can't just throw tradition away. We can do our best to utilize tradition and work within these boundaries and play with these rules and see what we can do with respect. And eventually this is what came about. So now, you know, we're getting in there, and a few of the back pieces have been done, and you know, I've done some carving and some painting, and I'm doing my best to integrate other artists that have respect for both traditions to get involved as well, to continue to kind of expand that community idea, basically. Because art itself, non-tattoo art, is very much about personal expression, and I definitely believe can be about community expression and identity, as he always speaks of. But to me, tattoo is very much about that. It can very well be about my own personal expression, and a person might be very happy to wear that was that time that Chris wanted to just express himself. But if I don't know this person well enough and they're not willing to possibly work with me as a team, they might be walking around wearing something that doesn't represent them in any way, shape, or form. And because it's that team effort, I feel it needs to be representing both of us and then representing all of us. So it's a different kind of an art form that, in my opinion, really requires certain levels of holding on to aspects of tradition, even though in the fine arts it's about break those boundaries. This is a way of breaking those boundaries, but still holding on and respecting what's been done in the past and keeping it going. I hope that helps.
This one is for Chaz. Knowing that you have your piece on so many bodies, do you have a favorite, and do you have the absolute most worst butchered? You know, because there's good prison tattoos, there's terrible prison tattoos. Has there ever been one that's just completely laughable, and what's the best to you?
How do you tell a cholo gangster that, ooh, I hate that?
Right, you can be quiet, right?
You missed that really bad here, it's totally out of my hands, in my perspective of what I do, But what's surprising is I've done a lot of other logos and titles and things like that. I did one called Street Dreams, okay? And the letters worked out really well. Then as I get an email, maybe it was about 3 years ago, and this young woman had Street Dreams tattooed on her neck. And then I have this other kind of skull that's straightforward, and the eyes are all like sparkly, like it's all excited or something. And then I get an email, and somebody's had that tattooed on their leg. Now it's totally independent of what they probably took it out of my book or saw it somewhere. I'm the type of artist who feels that my imagery is for free. It goes out there to the audience. When somebody wants an original, they come to my house. That's when I get my paycheck. But otherwise, my imagery is to speak. The imagery is for the audience, is for the culture. So when somebody sends me an image of a drawing of their tattoo with my drawing, it's a compliment. I really like it. Now, I've had this winemaker show me that he has Señor Suerte on his back, and I told him, you can never be stopped. You cannot go to jail because that's going to be a prison symbol. You're going to be put into a different part of the jail and all that. And you shouldn't have done that because it doesn't represent you. He felt it was kind of a cool image. I said, no, imagery, all our imagery that we do represents something more. It has a sense of power, background, history, and only certain people should have tattoos. I don't have tattoos. I mean, I was in the South Pacific in Fiji and Samoa and all down there, and asked me, you want a tattoo? I said, no, because I'm not Samoan. I think you have to be that person, I don't have 3 dots, maybe the loca, because I was never a gangster. I was the crazy hippie and all that. But all my cousins are in prison. My uncle was a zoot suitor and all that, so I know the life and all that. But to tell somebody that the tattoo is wrong, to tell them, I'm getting YouTubes from Bangkok and also Phnom Penh, Cambodia, of cholos. There's all these cholos over there. And then, Chicano Mexican gangsters, with a button-up shirt and all that for the non-people who don't know, a button-up shirt, or the buzz head. That kind of look, We all blend in LA. We all have a little biker, skater, kind of tattoo kind of thing. And I passed images around to my real hardcore tattoo friends and also skater friends. And I said, what do you think about these cholos in Bangkok? And they're saying, in the video, we're cholos, we're gangsters. We believe in the culture. We're anti-violence. And during the day, I'm a policeman. During the day, I work in a post office. But they believed in the culture, probably seen the movies, Blood In, Blood Out, and stuff like that. But I said, who are we to tell them that they can't believe into that culture, that they can't be cholos in Bangkok, that you have to be Latino, but you can't be Thai, or, I said, in some ways, the person who has the tattoo is the believer, that. In my case, I didn't feel I was the tattoo person or the Samoan or the Tongan or to get the tattoos. In some ways, I respected tattoos so much, I ended up with nothing, that. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but do I see people with my tattoos and all that? I respect them. They have the right to do whatever they want. Like I said, it's audience generated. It's the audience who gives us our power. It's the audience who has put me in this chair, you know. So if you believe in it, then you have the right.
So are you going to get commissioned to go out there and recreate East LA in the Philippines and East, you know, kind of Disneyland up the Cholo lifestyle?
You know, as my wife and I, so we get invited. We were in Auckland, New Zealand, and I interpreted a Maori song, all in my Cholo letters and all that. I've been to like Samoa. We were in Melbourne, in Australia, and there was people tapping me on the shoulder, and they had my letters on their knuckles and things like that. They know about my work. I get emails from Chiang Mai in Thailand, and they call me Brother Chaz, and they are using my styles in their Thai writing and stuff, you know. So, yeah, my influence is out there, and I have no control over it, and I'm very happy. I'm pleased that they get it and all that. But like I say, it happens organically and all that, you know.
I believe we have a question, second row, right? Okay, we'll do this question and we'll come back down here.
Mine's kind of off topic for Chaz. I never understood the Chicano community, the clowns, what they represent.
The clowning, you know, in '69 I did my skull. And if you look close to it, it does have little lines up and down the eye socket to represent a clown and all that. And then it went on is actually there's clowning, there's a dance, and then there's the dance where they're actually using their feet to write graffiti with their feet. There's guys that actually dress up as clowns and do that. But that's all I know. It's, you know, that's really something that doesn't happen in my community of Highland Park, of the avenues and Cypress Park, you know, CP boys and stuff. That's more of a kind of like it's sort of a younger generation down more in South Central. Is any of you guys know about clowning? You know, there's a couple of videos.
Chris has a clown tattoo.
You know, but a clown, maybe it was, putting your clown face on, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, it's more kind of a representing that you're, I really can't say, you know, but I know it was a clown was important in my imagery. There's certain symbols in Chicano graffiti that I don't know the history of. There's this kind of a square with a cross in it that we always use as a spacer, as the center of the whole composition, as part of the roll call. And I had somebody Chinese said, oh yeah, that's a symbol for the center of the earth. And then one time I was down in Pico Union, and I went down an alley to another alley, and right in the middle of the ground, there was a circle, a spray paint circle with arrows in all directions, which represent that we control in every direction, and like that. I put quotes in my graffiti because it's a spoken word. You know, when you see a roll call of names, you're supposed to speak it. Because, you know, there's a lot of symbolism, a lot of grammar, but nobody knows all of it. But clowning is interesting. I think there's a Snoop Dogg did a movie, had 5 chapters, and one of them was about clowning. I don't know the name of it, but Snoop Dogg did a great movie about that.
I have one for the whole panel. What about the religious? Are there any religious ties in Japanese tattooing?
I'm not an expert on anything, but I think one of the answer is like I guess like an emphatic yes. All Japanese tattooing in some form, I think, kind of conveys the whole culture of the nation, the history of it. And like if you go to Japan or research about it, you'll find like it's not just like you're going to church, but every little aspect of your life, there's something religious involved in it over there. Like, you know, between like any little rituals before eating or this or that, or, you know, my dad used to joke that you're born a Shinto and you die a Buddhist. There are people that take it very seriously that will go and, you know, go and pray, they'll chant, they'll be blessed. There's other people where it's just part of the daily fabric of their life. Like they might not even consider themselves religious, but I think like any part of Japanese culture, there are so many facets of that involved. And then with the, obviously with tattooing representing all that, like, you know, because it's not, tattooing is not limited to anything. Like there's, like people get all sorts of images. Many of them are deities. You know, the dragon itself is a deity which actually originated in India, moved along with Buddhism through Fudomyo, like a lot of people know. So there's people that get just actual religious imagery, even, and some of these people aren't religious at all, but they believe in that. And then there's also just, I think, other things that have more subtle religious connotations. I think almost everything does in some way, shape, or form.
Well, even like your birth year, like there's Chinese zodiac symbols, there's Buddhas that correspond to your birth year, symbols that represent them. So even if you're not particularly religious or going to temple, you know, it's funny, I would walk by temples and you'll see, you know, an old lady next to a young punk rock kid, next to all types of ages and sort of social groupings doing the same. I'm paying my respects this way, I'm lighting incense this way. They all know sort of a base level of how to conduct themselves in those situations, or they're at least aware of it. Yeah. You know, you walk down the street and it's just temple, priest there, you know, it's just, like he was saying, I mean, it's just part of the cultural fabric, which we don't have here, like a unified religion, which is cool, America, you know, freedom of everything. But there, it's, yeah, it's Shinto and Buddhism, and it's blurred together, and it's part of everything, whether you're religious or not. You don't separate church and state in that way.
Yeah, it's very literally in the fabric of the buildings even, and sometimes in a protective situation almost for the protection of that city and the building. But I mean, architecturally stuff is designed based on Shinto practice or Buddhist practice, and the same thing goes into the tattooing as well. Whether a gangster doesn't want to get shot to just a regular businessman who might be getting tattooed, he might be wearing that religiously for protection of his life or his family. You know, what, yearly, or not yearly, monthly, you got festivals, religious festivals happening for the betterment of your family, betterment of your house, betterment of everything.
It's like an energy thing.
It is.
It's just like, it's like good juju.
Always everywhere, good mojo. Yeah. It's always about getting some blessings. So of course it's in tattoo, definitely, yeah.
It's here too. I mean, architecture, there's plenty of buildings here that don't have 13th floors. You know, in China, Japan, there's no 4th floors. You know, they think like religion, you can be religious and say, I go to temple, I go to church, I pray, I meditate, I say my Hail Marys. Or you can simply say that you grew up with a certain behavior that you do. My mom will say that she's Methodist, but she's Buddhist. You know, she went to USC, she would attend Methodist church, but when I was in the hospital, she was freaking chanting. You know, when it came down to it, she was Buddhist and Confucian. And I have, you know, Guanyin, or the goddess of mercy, on my back. When Horitomo asked me what subject I wanted, I said, you know, Kanon, which is the Japanese version of it. But at the same time, I showed it to one of my Chicano friends. He's like, oh, that's the Virgin Guadalupe you have. And it's like, and he's like, look, there's a picture, and it's like very, very similar. So it really, it's very cross-fertilizing.
I think also there's a lot of a history in all cultures of amuletic tattooing. I mean, to the point where, like, he's talking about, like, the protection, like as Chaz was just saying. I know in Thailand, I've had friends go there and monks will tell them, oh, you know, I have these tattoos so you couldn't cut me or shoot me. I don't have a knife, so I can't show you right now. But, you know, there's like a certain belief system there. Well, firemen in Edo period Japan would get dragons tattooed, and dragon being like king of, you know, the sea and control of the rains, was impervious to fire. And we're now seeing modern American firemen getting those. And, you know, another example, like, you know, I have a employee who's also in the exhibition. She's Jewish American. She has Buddhist deities tattooed on her. She doesn't feel that conflicts with her religion at all. You know, just like a kind of respectful sort of understanding. And I think I feel like that's how it is. I think Japan, because there are multiple religions there, a lot of Japanese are okay with that as well. I mean, I don't know if Bill and Junie might be able to answer this better. I don't know if you want to. Not trying to put you on the spot, but if I'm, you know, just, but.
Well, I think in Japan, you know, Buddhist philosophy is part of the philosophy of the people in a way. I mean, if you look at trades, tattooing's a trade or a craft, and it's kind of approached with a certain mindset in the same way that ceramics was, woodworking is. You know, I think their approach to what they do, there's less separation here between, I think in America, this is my job, I have to do it, and then my real life starts. Versus there, I feel like a lot of your work is your identity. There's the salaryman thing, and then there's the craft thing, which is passed down. Like he was saying, generations of, the same thing happening. Like this store has been selling this type of candy for 500 years in this location. This tattoo lineage was passed down to this person, to this person, to this person. I just don't think that there's like, and I think a lot of that mindset is Buddhist in nature of just like, cool, like this is my task, I'm doing it, I'm bettering myself through what I'm doing in this thing. They're kind of representing themselves through the craft they do, whether it's, if you go to like a liquor store, you get like the best service ever because they're actually taking pride in like, well, this is something I'm doing that I care about. And I think when it translates to the arts and crafts is when you get the added thing of people with a lot amount of talent with a certain type of work ethic that comes from that mental place that I think is unique in the Japanese tattooing, at least. Watching how Japanese tattooers work. You've been around them. There's tons of hardworking tattooers, but Japanese are some when they come here, they're just, you watch them work, it's just, there's such a rigorum to it, there's such a, they're animals, really.
Title of our show. Come on.
Well, the perseverance, yeah. It takes what it takes to get the tattoo, what it takes to give the tattoo. I have so much respect for the people that I tattoo, because every time I get tattooed, I'm like, I can't believe I do this to people. Like, this is really intense. And I'm worse than them. They sit there stoic and they're, it's like, wow, okay. So I have to buck up. And then there's times I'll sit there and, oh, I'm getting tired. Oh, my arm hurts. And, whatever, they're giving me what they have, just physically, financially, emotionally. Like, I have every respect for that and every need to raise myself to their level and then exceed their expectations as much as possible because of what they're, what they're going through is, like he was saying, Chris was like the reciprocal thing of what it takes. It's a team effort, And it's interesting, like with the pieces that he's doing, that now you're starting to get people going, oh, I like what you do, just do it. Versus that's a much more Japanese concept. I think nowadays in America it's a lot more prevalent with people being able to have access to more tattoo imagery through the internet and Instagram and all that. Before it was like, well, you pick something or I want to talk to you about this. And I think that's like a unique thing to get to an artistic place where people are coming to you and saying, I respect what you do, please do it. In Japan, traditionally, for most traditional tattoo artists, correct me if I'm wrong, but a basic setup is you go because that's the artist that you've chosen or gotten an introduction to, and you you're not going in, I'm the customer, this is what I want. It's like, thank you for meeting with me, sensei. Like, hey, I'm interested in getting tattooed. They're going for what they have, not because they have this, obviously they want something, but they're putting a lot of the trust and understanding into their artist. And so it's really cool that concept is happening more and more, I think, in America in the last, I don't know.
I think it's gone back and forth. I think, for example, my back piece was done in 1998, which is not that long ago. But I wrote a letter to the master. He agreed to take me on. When I went there, I told him a basic concept of what I wanted. He showed me a sketch like that big, and then I laid down on the floor, and then he tattooed me. And I had no idea what he'd be doing some days. But
you wouldn't sit there like an American artist. The customer comes in.
Hey, here's the sketch. On Pinterest, and
right. Or if you show him a sketch, and they're like, well, can you make the eyeball bigger and maybe his arms a little and you wouldn't do that. Like, you show up, I want a dragon. Okay. Yeah. Now it's time to get it. That's the conversation.
And my input for Horitoma was when Taki the introduction, I wrote a letter asking if he would tattoo me for my back piece, and I got a fax back saying height and weight metric system subject. That was my input.
Yeah, the fax is big over there.
Fax was cool.
They love fax.
And then dates to be in Japan. Not when are you coming to Japan. These are the dates to be here.
Yeah. I've known people that flew to Japan to have a consultation with their artist.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because sometimes there's a language barrier and they're not sure, and that's amazing that we're in this age too where we're getting clients that are so well researched and prepared to get tattooed that they would do something like that. Who would hop on a plane for 2 days to make a personal introduction? That's so cool. And culturally that shows so much respect. Like, this is gonna cost me like $2,000, and the tattoo is gonna cost me thousands beyond that. But I want you to know that I'm serious, that I appreciate what you're doing. Like, again, that makes everybody's levels of commitment to the project very high, and that's when that really cool, special.
The tattooer takes you more seriously too.
Absolutely.
That's how I met Taki. I made an appointment. I flew up to meet him, just for consultation. And I'm like, I want him to know that I was serious. You know, not just coming because he's famous or because of his name.
Not famous.
Oh yeah, don't tell things about me. I'm glad we started talking about process, because I'm very interested in, as you know, tattooers, it's such a privilege to be able to do for your work something that you're so passionate about and that's so lovely and that connects you with, you know, so many generations. But I was wondering what parts of your process or what experiences have felt like work, and what experience have been that transcendent sort of passionate moment for you.
I mean, it's interesting. The process is interesting. It's almost like a road trip. Let's say someone comes, they want a back piece. You're like, okay, and you know, a lot of it has to do with chemistry between, you know, the person getting the tattoo and the person doing the tattoo. You know, it's always a mixture of excitement and overthinking, and you know, there's, okay, when someone commits to, like, let's say a large tattoo, it's almost like a road trip. You start, you're like, this is gonna be great, it's so exciting, and then you start, and here we go. And then like a few hours in, it's kind of, oh yeah, we're here, and oh man, it's taking forever. You know, and by the end, it was like, oh, sometimes it's almost anticlimactic. Like you spend, I don't know, how long does it take to do a back piece? You know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours. It could be any of those. So you end up spending so much time with these people, you develop these little relationships. So it normalizes the experience a lot more than being detached. I almost can't really get into, like, let's say a big tattoo I did until I see it maybe a year later. They come back and it's just like out of sight, out of mind. It's settled into the skin, and then it's like, oh wow, we did that. You know, like when you read a big chunk of a book and you're like, what did I just read? Same thing. You're tattooing. You're so kind of focused on what you're doing. I'm not thinking about the process. I'm thinking a lot about it when I'm drawing it. Thinking a lot about it when I'm laying it out, and then it's just kind of, at least for me, follow the lines and stay inside the lines.
Yeah. When you're doing it, you do your best to be in that moment, doing your job, doing that process. Definitely.
I think also then, like, disappointments arise when, like, for me, like, my biggest disappointment with large work is when someone doesn't finish, and like, sometimes that's completely beyond their control. But like, I've had those times when, like, oh, I'm so excited to do this tattoo, and I really, you know, I researched this and I drew this and I outlined it, and now the guy's like, oh, I'll be back in 6 months. I'm like, you know, and so, but I think as tattooers, we also learned that we have to be able to let go of our work. It's not ours, so you know, you do what you can and just hope for the best. You have to kind of be detached.
I get a lot of tattoo design work through email. I never meet my clients. So that is what they said, what they ask me, what does it cost, how long, I work out a calendar. And then I tell them it's going to cost this much, send half, and then I said, you get what I give you and stuff. And then when I send it, you know, then they send the other half, and I give them a digital tattoo image. And they have to find their own tattoo is to have it done. I recommended Chris because he knows my style. He knows where the points are and all that, and where the next letter starts and all that. You know what's important to me, because it's more, for me. It's more, instead of imagery, it's about letters. A lot of people have asked me, like, oh, how come you don't have my own font? I said, no, my strength is not my letters. It's the layout. It's how the whole thing fits. And once I get my design, I seek the poetry in it. I try to find the rhyme, reason, and echoes in it. I try to make it beautiful and passionate, you know. Because, I mean, it's what we all have. The one thing that we have a thread throughout is a passion for this work. I mean, it's a real love of what we do. It could be a job, but I'm going to take it as serious, you know. It's just as important to see a kid on a skateboard, one of my skateboards, or have a painting in a museum. It's just as important. It's this passion, because, you know, passion is the engine of perseverance and all that. That's what really drives us. So I do work in the process to anonymous people and all that. And I always tell them, send me an image, and when it's done. So I have a whole file of all these people. Well, one guy, his mother had passed away, and he wanted the tattoo on his left arm. That way she would be always close to his heart and all that. So there's different reasons why people ask me, but I work in a different kind of process. Yeah.
I think we're also fortunate, at least Chris, talking to myself, that I think that we're able to do the type of tattooing and artwork that we want to do for a living. Not that we have to do, which I'm not about, we all started the same way. Like whatever walks in the door, you tattoo it. Any style, any type of person, any image, you need to be able to do that. And then over the years, maybe your heart follows this one direction, like, wow, I'm really attracted to this style or that, or, multiple ones, and you start to kind of hone down what your direction is. And I think we're fortunate enough that people come to us for a certain thing. So the whole, when does it feel like work? It's kind of doesn't, because you're doing what it is that you love and want to do. And it's the thing that never gets old for me. It's like we're all lucky enough to have found that thing. I mean, I could stare at these types of images all day. I could look at these Japanese tattoos all day and not tire of it. And that's the one thing, if we go through phases, I like this band, or I'm into this kind of thing, and then, a few years later, you're on to the next. And this is the one thread for me that's stuck through my entire life.
But I'd say, it maybe becomes work if you have that kind of love and that kind of passion, which we all do, and for some reason, the team you're trying to create, which is the person wanting to wear this, doesn't reciprocate that love and passion and dedication that you're willing to put in. Because that's the most important thing. They're coming to you for them. Even though they're getting you on them, that's for them. This is their hard work that they're going to end up with, as much as it's our hard work. And we're there for you. But when they falter, it's the worst thing. That's the worst. That's when it's work, because then you have to do your best to figure out, is this person worth my time now? Is this person worth all the effort I wanted to give it? Because you're halfway through now, and it's like, okay, crap, I was giving this my all. Now should I give it my all? They're starting to falter. They're starting to turn into somebody that doesn't actually want this, and that's a horrible thing. That's a horrible thing. But when it's everything that he's discussing, that's when it's, yeah.
You're emotionally vested, so I feel less
emotionally, physically,
I feel
mentally,
like emotionally
everything, yeah.
let down, like almost kind of saddened that, wow, I gave you everything, and what did,
Mm-hmm.
you just left me, and, it's kind of like, because you do. I know. I do.
But it's also, all jokes aside, it's also a matter of, let's say, like in Chaz's situation, if he's doing this huge painting and he's been working on it for a month, now all of a sudden that painting decides never to be in his studio anymore, and it's not finished. And he has the painting's number, and he's trying to get a hold of it. But if he tries too hard, then that painting is like, oh, well, I don't even want to come anymore. I've got the power. I don't know, maybe I'll see if you can give me a better price or something. And they start playing mind games, and then you don't even get to finish the painting.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
Okay, we'll take that question at the end, this question at the top, right here, and we'll close out.
This is for the tattooers on a panel. How did you guys, I guess over the years, how did you guys develop to where you guys concentrated your style into, the specifically Japanese influence work? I know, Chris, you started in Tattoo Land, right? Or Good Time Charlie?
No, I didn't start there.
Okay.
I apprenticed at a different studio in Pasadena.
Okay.
And in my first year of tattooing, eventually went to Tattoo Land. So I've been there since 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for me, as a young tattooer, you just kind of, whatever walks in, you're kind of at their mercy, and
Of course. And it's your job to do them justice.
Yes, exactly. I would like to. My goal is to be able to hone in my style of work and my concentration to that. I'm like, to where your guys is at, to where, people come in specifically knowing my style. How do you guys go from, that walk-in person to developing your style into, now you got this specific style that people are, going for, asking for?
Don't worry about all that. Just worry about being good to the people, because they're the ones. We don't exist without them getting the tattoo.
Right.
They don't get the tattoo without us. So don't worry about that. When you meet the right people, it's going to happen, and then it grows. Be patient.
Well, and you're as good as the company you keep, I feel like. I know that Chris, Taki, and myself all came into tattooing with people that are considered, masters or pioneers. So we were fortunate in that we have a very direct connection to the generation before us. And, I credit all of my opportunities. I work hard and I try hard, but I've been lucky enough to be around really good people. And it's like iron sharpens iron, If you're around people that are the best people artistically, personality-wise, just if you're, I don't know. I've been lucky enough to be around people that were always kind of here to me. So I always had something to like look up to and strive for, and like an example that was set to kind of follow. So I feel like I've been fortunate in that way. I know Chris, like, working at Tattoo Land, I mean, same thing, like I'm connected with, Bill and Junie, and you're with these people that you have an obligation to something bigger than yourself. I think was a big part of, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. The obligation, the goal is not just about you. For him, it was about the client and about the company he's keeping, the house that he's in, making that right, making sure that legacy, that tradition is staying proper. And eventually, he's here now many years later doing that piece that he's trying to do, that piece of tattoo that he's trying to do. And it's important to separate your own artist ego from all of this, because eventually it happens if your motives are correct, but it's if you're worried about expressing purely yourself, do that in other ways. That'll come in tattoo eventually. Tattoo is way more about that community and the respect of others.
I think definitely the worst tattoo that can be done is one the client's not happy with. Yeah. I think there is definitely an idea that, on one hand, like, as a tattooer, if you take on a job, you really have to give it your all, give it your best shot, know when maybe you're not the guy for the job. Also, like, and for me, I think I always felt that I didn't want to be like jack of all trades, master of none. Like, I did want to focus. However, like, like I did a tribal thing last week. Like, I'm not above, it's about the client. For me, like, my worst clients are people I don't get along with. I mean, well, to be honest, like, at our studio, like, my wife screens everybody, like, kind of to try to find appropriate clients. No, but I mean, because we're not, like...
There's, like, a tracksuit at the front door.
There's a personality questionnaire and financial records. No, but in all seriousness, like, like, we are all, at the end of the day, trying to, like, make good art. However, like, these guys are absolutely right. Like, you're not above them. Like, this isn't... I don't like tattooers that think like, oh, this is me expressing myself. It's like, well, then do it on a painting, because you can throw that away. Like, this is someone else, and you have to take into account them. And I think Chris is absolutely right. You will find your way. And if, for example, for me being Japanese American, and for myself, like, tattooing was a real big way to connect with my identity. Like, getting my back done in Japan, really, it changed my life. And then from there, I actually did join a Japanese tattoo family. So I had a very clear structure from there. I'm not saying that's how it would work for you or whoever else, but if something interests you, pursue it. But never think you're above the client, because without, it's a mutual respect type thing.
Let me speak to you as an artist. Okay, as a painter, as an artist, everybody's good, that. And how are you going to stand out? I mean, as all these gentlemen here have a distinct style. Okay, so you need to ask yourself who you are first and all that. And you need to have your work, it needs to be unique, all right? It has to be different and all that. But besides that, it has to be profound, has to be important. Why is it important to me? What has something to say, some meaning. You need to find those two things, unique and profound, inside you to develop your own style and all that. So as an artist, I'm saying that to you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take our last question over here.
I was wondering if you could discuss for a minute the rules and symbolism of Japanese tattooing. What makes a tattoo Japanese?
Of course, the last question is like the one that's actually a question that we couldn't really answer.
That's kind of what this is all
about.
I
think
right?
all of it, like, I don't think, for example, I don't think the ethnicity of the tattooer, the ethnicity of the wearer has anything to do with it. In this day and age, I don't think it's a matter of like whether you're using machine or hand tools. I think it's a matter of if you're trying to continue a tradition to keep conveying the culture of Japan. But even within that, like, I'll give you an example. Like, in the family that I was in, we were taught, for example, when you do masks, you do them in odd numbers, and otherwise it's bad luck. And then there's other families where they would count the client's face as a mask. So in that sense, you would tattoo even numbers. And back to what we're saying, neither is correct, but both are trying to adhere to a certain tradition. But as far as like, I don't think that tradition means blind you know, imitation of your master. Like if you look at, for example, like Kuniyoshi to Yoshitoshi, like those are two, you know, legends of Japanese woodblock prints, and Yoshitoshi was Kuniyoshi's apprentice. But if you look at Yoshitoshi's work, at the beginning, it's a complete, perfect imitation of Kuniyoshi. And then later, as you know, like he was also exposed a lot more to Western influences, his work changed. It's still completely 100% Japanese, but it's different. And I think even like with the Perseverance show, I think we tried to show that of these are the ways that the Japanese tattoo is mutating and morphing, and we're moving towards like a world culture. So I think what makes something inherently Japanese, I mean, even if you look at the country of Japan with the way the population is declining, that's going to change too. You know, you guys have some.
Just as it's like we were talking about earlier, I mean, it's so blurred now. We were talking about how the you know, Issei, Nisei, so there's like, you know, these generations, and then like, okay, so I'm like half, you know, Taki's full Japanese, I'm half, my kids are a quarter, their kids might be a quarter also, they might be an eighth, they might just, as the generations keep going on, and like more of a global community happens, like, I don't think there is a definition of what, there's Japanese style tattooing, there's, like, is what's Chris doing, is that Japanese? That's heavily Japanese influenced, and so many, the rules and aesthetics are completely drawn from that in an appropriate way. But is it a Japanese tattoo? No. But is it not a Japanese tattoo? No. That's the interesting part about where we're at. It's so ambiguous, and it's happened so fast because 40 or 50 years ago there was only Japanese tattoos, and it was, yeah, Japanese guys in Japan doing Japanese tattoos on Japanese people and the occasional sailor. And now, you know, it's like, it's
or European royalty.
Yeah, or royalty.
European
Yeah,
royalty.
yeah,
Yeah,
or royalty.
But yeah.
Totally. So I guess that was a great. Yeah.
Yeah, they're.
There's themes. The thing about Japanese,
No,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's interesting. The Japanese tattooing. There's basically a bank of images that are going to be your standards.
Sure.
Dragons, carps, peonies, chrysanthemums, cherry blossoms. There's like a couple dozen things that cover 90% of the main images. I mean, there's like within the deities, there's a lot, but let's say like religious figures, tigers. You know, these things. There's not actually a ton. It's like I feel like even in Japanese food, if you go into a Japanese kitchen, there's not a ton of billions of, you know, spices and all, like there's some sake, there's some soy, there's some ginger. Really, there's not a ton of different ingredients, and same with that. It's just knowing, I think, the image base. There's actually not a ton of images in the image base of Japanese iconography you see in tattooing, but it's used in infinite ways, which is, I think, what's fascinating about it, is that you can do so many things with a fairly limited number of ingredients, I guess. Does that make sense?
Even on the second gallery wall where we tried to give the quote-unquote educational explanation of Japanese motifs, I mean, we just struggled with that forever. I mean, Taki, Horitomo, Horiken were just like on and on because we didn't want to be, this is definitively this means this. A dragon always means this. This is never that way. We can sort of like just take a loose definition and try to get as general a meaning as we can. I mean, if I ask you, you know, what does the American flag mean to you? There's things, what do icons mean? What does a phoenix mean in Western culture versus Eastern culture? We tried to stick to the rules generally, but realize that they're very flexible at the same time.
All right, I lied because that wasn't the last question. I have a last question.
Good. Maybe we can answer this one.
I'd like to ask each of the panelists to give us your favorite memory from Perseverance, whether that's along the way of creating it, what happened during one of the programs, just any portion of Perseverance that stuck to you most. We'll start with Kip.
Well, good one. There was a time, I'll split them in half. Half was the time this was 2 years every day doing this show. Every day waking up, I'm 10 steps behind. And there was a time about a year in where Taki was trying to do his convention. He was trying to, and he's like, dude, I am fried on this. I'll do this, but, and he was really down, and I was trying to get through that with him, and seeing him come around that sort of point was one huge one, because like we charged it, and that was like, I mean, I always thought of him as my brother. That was like really cemented it. The one memory I have most is actually in this room, was actually listening to Junie speak. That was most amazing to me.
As far as memories, I think my favorite part of Perseverance, and to be honest, was for my mother to be here at the opening. I think a lot of stuff I do, my father's passed on, so I think a lot of things I do, I think of like, I want my parents to be proud of me. I think most people do. But so to have her here at the opening, she actually we had a kimono made in Kyoto, where like she wanted to do something kind of hip and new and different, so we had it dyed but with like tattoo designs. So I thought that was really cool, and she was very happy. And my father was a professor, so I know he would have been really happy about this. And then also, and this is for the Janum people, but speaking of things that are Japanese, Hello Kitty is 100% Japanese, and that's the next show that's coming up here, opening in October. Shameless plug, so make sure you all go to that too.
Going to Japan with Kip and Take and Chris was a complete blast, like nonstop. One of the most fun weeks ever. So that was it. But my biggest memory was my 92-year-old uncle coming to the opening of the show. Not because he knew that I even did tattoos, but because he's a member of this museum. Like my family, it was a big full circle thing for me basically. My dad was born in '45. A super bad time to be Japanese in America, obviously. So when I grew up, it was almost, he was super embarrassed of being Japanese growing up because he grew up in Utah, conservative area. So I'd go visit my grandma, stay with her in the summers, and she was like, no, sneaking it in on the side. She'd all Japanese books, and she'd spend all night typing out translations for me, and so it was like, I grew up in a family where it was like, oh, it's kind of embarrassing to be Japanese. And then this experience through the museum really legitimized that for me, like, wow, this big full circle thing. Like I realized like, oh, my other family members had donated all this stuff to this museum, were connected with it, and I had no idea. So it was really neat for me to like, wow, okay, kind of come full circle family-wise. Like, it was just a neat, connection for me.
My perseverance story is that the logo, I designed the logo up here. And Taki was, he gave me about, about 10 months, which you came to me. And as a letter designer and all that, if you look at it, too many letters. Perseverance is a really long word. It's like a train, and I'm trying to find that poetry, that echo and all that stuff. But it just kept on going, kept on going really long and dull. So it took me a while. Sometimes you do a piece of work, you always put it away. You come to look at it again is about another week, and you can see all the mistakes that wasn't obvious, but it's so blatant and all that. So I kept on reworking. I said, it's missing something. It needs to be perseverance. How do I get the meaning besides the lettering? And I finally figured it out, and I did perseverance and perseverance. I did two of them, and I created a circle and all that. And I was real happy, Mr. Bob Roberts, with much respect. So this logo, I created a circle of perseverance, continuity, like this thing that we have, a never ending circle. So I gave it to Taki and all that. So I was really proud of it, So it was used on, it's in the book, and it was used on a few things, but they kept this logo consistent throughout their whole show. But if you look in the catalog, there's a circle one that I'm really proud of.
Nothing amazingly profound like all these guys. Pretty much, maybe, I guess the memory of Taki calling me and saying that he had this show locked down. Just hearing that, knowing that this was happening, and knowing Taki and how he does things, he always does it right, does it solid, gets the right folks together. So just hearing that day, that moment of hearing that, oh, I got this. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And it's just really exciting to hear. So that anticipation moment of 2 years from now, this is going to happen. And then finding out some of my favorite people are involved and stuff like that. And probably the cold shoyu ramen in Yokohama. That was good. It was delicious. It was delicious.
And if you guys didn't know, these guys were working on clients nonstop to try to finish work to get photographed in time for the show. I mean, props to the clients, but props to the tours as well. I have one last story that this reminded me of what happened in here as well. When we unveiled 50 clients in full suits wearing fundoshi, including Richard, Paul, some of you guys are here. This had never been seen in the U.S. before like this, and this place is packed every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. The next auditorium is filled with a closed circuit screen of people trying to get in to see them, because you've never seen this amount of quality of work. And people are trying to be polite, but the people are walking up these stairs over and down, and people, every single person's got their phone and cameras taking pictures. And my 91-year-old mother, who is from China, who has never seen my back piece, who can't stand that I'm tattooed, gets up with her iPhone and starts walking in the middle and starts filming everybody. And I heard from a friend that in the other auditorium with 200 people watching, the entire screen is magenta because she's standing in front of the camera. You know? And as she backs away, they realize it's this old Chinese lady filming that everyone just enjoyed it, and that was another good memory. So thank you, Jenna, for that.